Hello, this is Wade Frazier. Um, this is June 3rd, 2026, 9:19 a.m. Uh, when short-term economic gain is weighed against long-term economic disaster, short-term economic gain almost always prevails. And this isn't new, this is an ancient dynamic. And I remember reading about, I think it was Rome. Again, Rome is just waves of ecological devastation emanated from Rome, which eventually took in the whole Mediterranean periphery. And yeah, there were thick forests near Rome, and then centuries later, Romans were amazed to hear that there used to be thick forests near Rome. Uh, and uh, when you deforest something, the soils will get lost or washed away downstream, and around Rome, all that silt, soil that got released from the deforestation, it would go down the streams, and it would fill harbors and actually create marshes where malaria thrived, this kind of stuff. And these effects were noted at the time. Even the ancient Greeks noted, in fact, going back to even Gilgamesh. So deforestation leads to a more arid local climate. This has been known for several thousand years. This stuff's not new. And I think it was Rome that somebody said, "Hey, we're we're wiping out our environment," and it was, I think it was Rome, and they said, "Well, the official response was, we need to study that." So they did, but of course, nothing ever happened. It was just kind of, you know, a stalling technique, whatever. Yeah, nothing was done about it. Um, yeah, the Mediterranean's periphery is littered with moonscapes, lands that were once forested, mountains that were forested, and these moonscapes. I saw it in 1974 when I spent 2 months in Europe. Sailed took a boat through took a couple boats through the Mediterranean. Yeah, moonscape islands, moonscape mountains, which used to be all forested. In my previous posts on the energy racket, what I didn't discuss, which I'm going to now, neglected to discuss intellectual wars for the rackets. And there's a lot of them. And it's a thing where some of them are definitely on the payroll of various interests. Some are just freelancers because, again, they just parrot the propaganda. Skeptics are like this. Yeah, these intellectual wars for the establishment, particularly for the rackets. And I said I doubt that a lot of it hails from the global elite level. I'm going to get into one right now on the issue of a global warming, climate change, acid rain, this kind of stuff. I doubt that the global elite had much to do with it. I could be wrong. Um, but there have been these people on the payroll of oil companies, hydrocarbon lobby, tobacco companies, etc., who will muddy the scientific waters. Scientific findings will come out that'll say, "Hey, we have acid rain, or global warming, or secondhand tobacco smoke is harmful," all this kind of stuff. And there'd be all these so-called scientists, and I'll get more into this in my coming medical racket posts. These are subjects I've been discussing for a long time, where science is misused to um, used for propaganda purposes. And Ed Herman actually called it the true junk science. And arguably the leading practitioner of this junk science was a guy named Fred Singer. And Fred Singer was basically a hired gun. And he actually worked for the oil companies, tobacco companies, among others. And he fought against scientific findings regarding acid rain, secondhand smoke, and global warming. as he defended the interests of the people who paid him. So, and back in the 1980s, there really wasn't a debate. There wasn't really a debate among scientists on global warming, really. Not really. I mean, and today there's not much of one today among really scientists who don't have conflicts of interest. The only climate scientists, the only debate on global warming and climate change is how fast and how much Earth will warm. The dynamics of global warming are not controversial among climate scientists. The basic mechanics have not been disputed since the 1800s. Dr. Arrhenius' calculations from 1896 is still the relevant one. Yeah, the increase in temperatures is already had. It conforms to, his calculation they came up with, well over a century ago. And for me, and again, I was aware of this. In fact, I actually became aware of the global warming issue mostly because of Fred Singer's efforts. In that he and a handful of these hired gun science, so-called scientists who literally were in the pay of the hydrocarbon interests, they were disputing global warming, particularly as climate scientists started becoming alarmed in the 1980s. Then this is this counterattack by people like Fritz Singer, and and so that's how I heard about it. So I followed this for years and years, and but I really didn't study it very closely until I began to study paleology, which is basically the history of Earth's past, ancient past, and I saw how Earth's carbon dioxide levels were really uncontroversially the driver of ancient warm and cold periods. So we've had ice ages and hot periods over Earth's history. And really just about no debate among scientists on this issue of that carbon dioxide levels are the primary driver of that. And so volcanism is what introduces carbon to the carbon cycle, and deposition, sediments, is what removes it. Those are the two basic dynamics of climate fluctuations. Basically, how much carbon dioxide is being introduced to the atmosphere versus how much carbon is being taken out through deposition, and again subduction with plate tectonics, etc. So this is the basic dynamic, and the weathering. In fact, again, I don't get too far afield here, but basically Earth's been cooling down for the last 15 million years with declining carbon dioxide levels, which is reduced volcanism is part of that, but also the mountains such as the Himalayas that got exposed from tectonics. There's weathering that happens, rainfall, and that actually takes carbon out of the atmosphere, eventually through sediments. And so this has been happening for the last 50 million years. And again, there's really not really much. I mean, there's no debate that it's been cooling, and the reason why. Also, there's not much debate on this. Again, what's introducing carbon, what's taking it out, but all of a sudden we have this unprecedented issue where humanity began digging up and burning Earth's hydrocarbon deposits. Only a few centuries ago this began, and since the 1800s, Earth's carbon dioxide levels have increased by 50%. And carbon dioxide is the leading greenhouse gas. So this is, again, carbon dioxide traps infrared radiation. There's no dispute about this. And then water vapor is also captures infrared radiation. These 3 and 4 atom molecules can do this, trap infrared radiation. But water only stays in the atmosphere about a week before it comes out in precipitation, whereas carbon dioxide lasts for a century, and it's evenly distributed, unlike water. So yeah, this is carbon dioxide has been considered the leading, most important greenhouse gas for a long time. And again, and burning those hydrocarbons that industrialized humanity has been doing now for centuries. Earth's carbon dioxide levels have increased by 50% since the 1800s. That has warmed Earth. There is no credible scientist that's going to dispute that. And then, but it's amazing. It's been, how to say, disheartening at times, but sometimes I would say amazing. The truly idiotic arguments that people are giving me these just really idiotic arguments for why that's not the case, because they read the talking points by the propagandists out there. Now, I mean, and I've written about this. I'll give three brief ones. One of them is that, well, carbon dioxide is only less than 1% of the atmosphere, so it couldn't have that much impact. Except 99% of the atmosphere is oxygen, nitrogen, and argon, and none of them trap infrared radiation like carbon dioxide does. So it's a total ridiculous argument, really ridiculous argument to say that. Another one was, again, this is people approaching me telling me this stuff. Is one of them is that, well, even if the ice caps in Antarctica and Greenland melt, it won't raise Earth's sea level, because it's just floating ice. Well, it's not floating ice. That ice is actually on land, and there's no debate that Earth's sea level will increase by hundreds of feet if those melt. Yeah, just crazy arguments I get from people. Another one's volcanism. So I mentioned volcanism. Well, literally people say, well, volcanism is the cause of all the increasing carbon dioxide over the last, century and a half. That's a totally there's no truth to that whatsoever. And so the estimates today are the burning of hydrocarbon fuels is somewhere between 100 and 1,000 times greater than volcanism as far as contributing carbon dioxide to the atmosphere. Yeah, so volcanism has got nothing to do with it. And so it's just, and these are people in my life who do this, and again, it's like flat Earth stuff. It's really, this is the kind of, and again, people will just parrot stuff that, and again, wearying to hear these kinds of arguments from people who just have no idea. I mean, just all they do is parroting something they saw on the TV show on Fox News or something. And it's just, really amazing. And there again, in the early 1990s, when climate scientists started becoming alarmed, again, Singer and his cronies started challenging the whole thing, challenging whether Earth's warming at all, or that humans have anything to do with it, whether carbon dioxide levels have anything to do with it. And again, all these guys work for oil companies. It was originally just a handful, like 6 of them. And they were creating it, and the media welcomed them. So the media welcomed to be some, so, and again, how to say it, the media is wonderful at shutting out any alternative perspectives in the propaganda one. But in this one, they decided, well, let's give Fred Singer and his friends a respectable hearing in the media. And all they did was create this illusion of dissent that doesn't exist among scientists. And again, these guys were all hired guns working for the hydrocarbon interests, which you didn't see that in the media when these guys were holding forth. Yeah, with their little studies, etc. And I've had to suffer through reading their work, and it's just garbage. I mean, total garbage, lies. It's just, yeah, they make it up as they go kind of stuff. Or again, they play statistical games, but again, I'm very well versed in statistics, and it's the thing where seeing what these people do is like watching a card show. Well, watching a guy play 3-card monte with his marks. These guys are just, yeah, deeply dishonest. I mean, there's no way these guys could believe it. And again, taking money from the hydrocarbon interests as they're making these arguments. Yeah, these people sold their souls. And in fact, Singer actually tried to recruit Brian O'Leary into it. And because he actually mentored. So in Brian's early days he was a climate scientist. Again, the climate of Mars was one, and that's why it was chosen by NASA to go to Mars, because Martian, climate, etc. I think this is before we had probes going to Mars, etc. But Brian was one of the world's leading Mars experts at the time, but Earth's climate was also a professional concern of Brian's. And again, Singer mentored Brian when Brian was young. And in fact, when Brian and I had our epic note trading session back there in 2021, I mentioned global warming and Fred Singer because again, I've been following this for years, and I don't think I knew it that Brian knew Singer. Again, he mentioned it. I didn't know this at the time, and when I mentioned this about again in our note trading session, that was the angriest I ever saw Brian. Yeah, he was so angry at Singer for doing what he's selling his soul like that. And again, trying to recruit Brian into the whole thing. It was just he planned to confront Singer. I don't know if he ever did. Um, and here we are with an El Nino that's coming, which may be epic. And the climate change deniers will be out in full force, singing the hydrocarbon lobby's tune. And all of the rackets employ ideological wars like Singer to muddy the waters and create the illusion of controversy. I call it the manufacture of dissent. So yeah, this is a key part of the rackets. And again, I have my doubt. I mean, how to say it? There are people people have attacked me, etc. And you had to wonder whose payroll they might have been on. And some of them definitely were. Some of them I'm not so sure. Um, so this is part of how the rackets operate is these intellectual warriors who coincidentally, defend the interests of those who butter their bread. Imagine that. So anyway, this will come up more in my future posts on this. So that's all I have for today.